Today we saw the Eternals. Aiden, what was the plot of the Eternals?
The Eternals is 3 hours long. There's a bunch of eternal people who were created by the Celestials. The Celestials, in short, are, if you've seen Fantastic Four 2, Galactus, I'm pretty sure he's one of the Eternals. He's a big spaceman who makes...
He's not. He's just another big spaceman.
They're big spacemen who make galaxies. And the Eternals, there's a lot of them. There's Angelina Jolie, and she can make a sword. There's the Indian guy from Silicon Valley, and he can shoot lasers. And there's Highlander from The Boys, but he's Irish. There's there's Flash, but she's a black woman. There's
the guy who can take over minds.
The mind reader guy, who's the guy from Dunkirk who bonks his head on the boat. There's the main character is a Chinese lady, because this movie was directed by a Chinese lady. They wanted this movie to be a big success in China, which is why it's made like a Chinese movie. That is to say, it feels like it was written by government mandate, and that anyone who disobeyed the government mandate would be shot in the back of the head 3 times and buried in a mass grave. The first hour and a half of this movie is a repetitive cycle where they go to find one of the other Eternals, and then they have a conversation with them that goes like, Salma Hayek died, and we need to stop the big guy, and then there's a flashback to something. That goes on for like 2.5 hours, and then there's a fight scene at the end. Connor, what'd you think of the Eternals?
I know the first 2/3 of the Eternals fucking sucked, but once the Eternals were assembled, I thought the last third was pretty good as far as a Marvel movie goes, because it actually did unique stuff for the last third. Like I kind of implied, the first 2/3 of this movie kind of was a stinker. It's just boring. There's no grasp on what the plot is, and it kind of sucked.
Yeah, it was a really unique...
But then, once the plot actually gets going and you're like, oh, the Celestials are trying to make Earth into another Celestial, or trying to birth another Celestial from Earth, which would kill all the life on the planet, and Highlander becomes evil and fights the Eternals, like, there's some decently cool stuff there. It's shot pretty well from Chloe Zhao for the most part. The CGI is pretty crust. The CGI has some crusty moments. It's not quite as crusty as Black Panther.
I feel like Chloe Zhao went to the Zack Snyder school of filmmaking, where she's like, apply a blue-gray filter to everything and then put a bunch of CGI in later.
The fight scenes were pretty cool.
The one fight scene was cool. The ones with the fucking monster dicks were boring as fuck.
The first couple fight scenes sucked, but the one when the Eternals are first kind of assembled, where the Asian guy dies, was cool, and the final one was cool, but otherwise it kind of sucked, the fight scenes. The characters were serviceable, but not great. I thought there were too many characters, as I kind of expected there to be, so it was kind of nice that spoiler alert, they kill off half the damn characters, which I thought was helpful to making the movie watchable. And overall, the movie was watchable, but mostly skippable. So Aiden, what did you think of the Eternals?
The Eternals gave me a mental breakdown. I never thought I'd watch a superhero movie worse than the Snyder Cut, but Marvel did it. The Eternals is the most soulless, lifeless, boring 3-hour piece of shit I've ever sat through. I don't know where to start, so I'll just start with the characters. One, there are none.
But
every character has...
Black Widow.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Every character has, at best, one personality trait, but usually 0. The Chinese lady is in love with the guy from Game of Thrones. The Indian guy is the comic relief who has an Indian sidekick. And then there's Highlander from The Boys who's evil. And then there's etc. I can't name a personality trait of another character outside of that. The first 2.5 hours of this movie are a repetitive cycle of they go to one of the other Eternals, they say Salma Hayek is dead, and then there's a flashback to something incredibly boring. The actual plot of the movie doesn't start until nearly 2 hours in, when they finally reveal that the Celestials are trying to blow up the Earth. Like every other movie, Marvel has this problem now, where anytime they introduce new characters who have been around for a while, they have to do this fucking cope routine where they're like, how come you didn't help stop Thanos? And then, like, also since the fucking Eternals have been around for 8,000 years, they also have to, like, justify why they didn't stop the fucking Holocaust or 9/11. And then but then it turns out that the Eternals were causing 9/11 and fucking the Holocaust, because at one point the gay black man makes the nuclear bomb and personally drops it on Hiroshima and Nagasaki for some fucking reason.
I can't believe
it's literally fucking insane.
I've heard all about this.
It's literally fucking insane. This movie is fucking insane. Nothing happens for the first 2.5 hours. I don't normally talk about my letterbox because I only have 4 reviews. 2 for the movies we've reviewed tonight, Derek Jokester and the Eternals. 1 for Transformers 4, where I give it a 5 stars because T.J. Miller died. And 1 for The Many Saints of Newark, where I give it 1.5 stars because it sucked. And I made 11 edits to my Eternals review throughout the movie as I spiraled into a depression watching it. At one point, my Letterboxd review of the Eternals devolved into a Zack Snyder apology, where I apologized for calling the Snyder Cut the worst film ever made. I think the Eternals is intolerable.
Only you would exaggerate and say the Snyder Cut's not even in the top 5 worst movies I've seen this year. I can name 5.
Yeah, the Eternals is
Derek
worse.
Jokester. Diabolical Themes of Derek Jokester.
This is a worse version of Diabolical.
Furious 9 was fucking worse than the Snyder Cut. I'm sorry. Conjuring 3 was worse than the Snyder Cut.
This is a worse version of Thaddeus Jackson. Thaddeus Jackson has ironic value. I don't think I've ever felt less watching a movie. With Thaddeus Jackson, I laughed. I cried. With Derek Jokester,
You lived, laughed, and loved, is
I
what
was embarrassed. With Derek Jokester, I felt physical embarrassment, which is an emotion. With this, I felt like a Chinese government machine made a script. A Chinese government AI made a script, and then a Chinese government AI directed it. And absolutely, I had no emotion. I had no thought. It was 3 hours long. The first 2 hours of the story is literally nonsense, with absolutely no bearing on the actual plot. The fight scene at the very last, 15 minutes of the movie was pretty good. And, everything else was a boring mess. I would probably watch Derek Jokester again over this, because Derek Jokester gave me the emotion of embarrassment, which this movie couldn't even manage. This movie gave me the emotion of wanting to drink more alcohol to get it over faster with. And also, at the very end of the movie, in the post-credits scene, a little cartoon goblin pops out of a rainbow, and it's voiced by Seth Rogen. And Seth Rogen was also going to voice Donkey Kong in the Mario movie.
Well, Chris Pratt is going to play Garfield.
Yeah, I saw that. That's weird.
Chris Pratt's taking on all the animated roles.
Do you think that's just going to be
How
like
the fuck
future
do you even
from
make
now?
Chris Pratt play fucking... Chris Pratt playing Mario is a stupid choice.
It's a
But I'm
horrible
almost
choice.
more surprised. I can almost see Chris Pratt playing Garfield less.
Well, yeah,
because Mario's enthusiastic
well, the
and Chris
fucking
Pratt's
thing about
enthusiastic.
Chris
Maybe
Pratt,
you can make that work. But Chris Pratt is the
you know what
polar opposite
the
of
thing
Garfield.
about Chris Pratt is that Chris Pratt was like the main character in the Lego movie, and so Mario is just going to be a clone of the Lego movie, and Garfield's just going to be a clone of the Lego movie. And anytime they need an animated movie to make a lot of money, like in like 6 months there's going to be like a fucking...
Anytime Chris Pratt needs to make a lot of money.
In like 6 months they're going to make like a fucking My Little Pony animated movie starring Chris Pratt as fucking Tony Pony Horse or some fucking shit. And it'll be a movie, it'll be a beat by beat copy of Lego Movie where there's a guy who doesn't fit in and he learns that it's okay to stand out from the world. That's what the Mario movie's going to be. And the Toads are going to be minions. And in Garfield, Odie's going to be a minion and he's going to say banana and it'll be voiced by Seth Rogen, the voice of Donkey Kong, and Pee-Pee from the Eternals, the little cartoon goblin from the Eternals, voiced by Seth Rogen. And he's like, dude, weed, and he drinks from the mug, and he looks like a cartoon.
Harry Styles.
And then Harry Styles plays
Red.
Lightning Bolt or something, who's the brother of Thanos, but he looks like Harry Styles. Anyway, the point is, the Eternals didn't stop the Holocaust because...
Passiveness, man.
The Eternals, I mean, most likely the Eternals caused the Holocaust, given all the things that we've seen in the movie. I mean, the gay black man killed millions of Japanese people.
Hundreds of thousands. But anyways.
I mean, it might stretch into the millions if you consider the long-term effects of radiation, but...
Probably right about that. So Aiden, would I recommend the Eternals?
Would you recommend the Eternals?
Probably not. So Aiden, would you recommend the Eternals?
I'm not gonna lie. No, this is the worst MCU film. It makes
Perfect.
It makes Thor: The
Make
Dark
some
World look
food.
good. It makes Thor look good. It makes the Snyder Cut look good. It makes Thaddeus Jackson look good. It makes Derek Jokester look good.
That's impressive.
I think The Eternals is one of the most dog shit movies I've ever been forced to waste 3 hours on.